motivational movement if it wasn't for all of you. And so here's what I want to talk to you about. I want you to think about, what is something that you've been thinking about or longing to do? Maybe you've been thinking about writing a book. This thing that you constantly think about. You're saying, man, I've got a great story. I want to impact some lives. And you've been thinking about it. You just haven't acted. You haven't made it happen. Or you've been thinking about starting your own business. I mean, this thing. You've been considering it. You're saying, well, should I start? Do I have enough money? Do I have the resources? Do I know how to make this thing happen? Or maybe you've been thinking about tapping into one of your gifts, your skills, and your talents to be able to transform your life. Or maybe you've been thinking of getting out of debt, or you've been thinking about pursuing a new career line. You've been thinking about going back to school and getting another degree. Well, regardless of what it is you've been thinking about, here's what I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to literally expand your thinking. I want to challenge you to magnify whatever it is that you've been thinking about. And so you say, well, Andy, what do you mean by that? Well, the reason why I share that with you is because it takes me back to something that Donald Trump said many years ago. And here's something that he said. He said, if you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. I'm going to say that again. If you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. And so here's what I know. One of the things that I love is when I get an opportunity to go in and maybe sometimes speak to the youth is one of the things that I like to do when I have some extra time. And, when you get the opportunity to speak to young kids, especially kids in like elementary school or maybe even early middle school, you ask them, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what would you like to do? And you hear the most amazing things. I want to be president of the United States. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a CEO. I want to be a business owner. I want to travel the world. They tell you all the things that they want to do. And one of the things that you and I know is as we begin to go through life, and we begin to deal with rejection, and we begin to deal with disappointments, and we begin to deal with many of the things that unfortunately begin to beat us up and make us start shrinking in our thinking, that all of a sudden now we begin to reduce our big, huge dreams, those things that we want to do, and we begin to settle. And we start to shrink in our thinking. And so I want to remind you of what Donald Trump said. He says, if you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. And so I want to challenge you right now, this moment, that whatever it is you've been thinking about, whether you've been thinking about writing a book, whether you've been thinking about starting a business, whether you've been thinking about using your gifts, your skills, and your talents, I want to challenge you to magnify your dream. I want to challenge you to enhance your thinking. As a matter of fact, here's what I would tell you. If your goals, your dreams, or whatever thing that you've been thinking about, if it doesn't intimidate you, if you don't find yourself asking yourself, well, how am I going to pull this off? Then chances are you're not thinking big enough. I'm going to say that again. If whatever your dream is, whatever it is that you've been thinking about doing, if it doesn't intimidate you, if you're not sitting back and wondering and saying to yourself, well, how am I going to make this thing happen? Then chances are you're not thinking big enough. So what I want you to do is I want you to magnify your level of thinking. I want you to increase your goals and your dreams. And so if you've been thinking about maybe just writing a little teeny book, I said, well, why don't you go ahead and aim at making a bestseller, or not just writing one book, but actually writing several books. If you've been thinking about starting a little business, why not start a massive business, a big business, type of business that creates impact, the type of business that changes lives, the type of business that allows you to actually employ other people. If you've been thinking about, as a hobby, doing something that you really like, I would say, why not even think even bigger? Why just make it a hobby? Why not make it a career change? Why not find a way to utilize your gifts, your skills, and your talents in order to make an impact, in order to make the things happen? You see, here's what I realized, that many of us, unfortunately, that we're not making the level of impact that we need to make in our lives. Many of us are not living the type of life that we should be living. Why? Because we're thinking small. Why? Because we're not magnifying our thinking. We're resorting to our comfort zone because some past experiences, some past disappointments, some past failures, some past setbacks, some things have happened to us that have literally caused us to minimize in our level of thinking, that have caused us to reduce our goals and our dreams, that have caused us to shrink back. And what I'm asking you to do is to get uncomfortable. What I'm asking you to do is to begin to think big again. What I'm asking you to do, expand your thinking, the type of thinking that intimidates you, the type of thinking that you say to yourself, well, how am I going to do this? You know, somebody once said that how is none of your business. It was Nietzsche that said that a man or the woman that has the why for living can endure almost any how. And so sometimes you have no idea as to how you're going to do it. But let me tell you, if you've got a big enough dream, if you've got a big enough vision, and you've got a strong enough reason as to why you have to make this thing happen, trust and believe that the how will show up. The right people will begin to show up in your life. You'll begin to discover some things about yourself that you didn't know. And so what I want to do is I want to awaken that dreamer within you. I want to awaken that person in you that has reduced your level of thinking. You know, we've all done it. I've done it. I've done it. I can tell you that I have done it. There's been times that I have because of past experiences, I began to shrink and reduce my level of thinking and shrink and reduce my level of dreaming. And so there has to be a reminder, and we need a message like this sometimes that reminds us, wait a second here, why am I shrinking in my thinking? Why have I allowed past experiences and failures and disappointments? Or why am I allowing other people with limited vision, other people to get me to reduce my level of thinking, to get me to start shrinking in my goals and my dreams? And I want you to start thinking about dreaming big again. I'm talking about big, audacious dreams. And when I think about that, I think about, you know, one of my cousins, you know, at one point, she was just simply working at a local, you know, grocery store as a cashier. And as she was working there at the local grocery store as a cashier, you know, she had this book and she didn't know what to do with the book. And she heard from somebody that, you know, you can sell your used books online. And so she knew the book was worth something, and she just wanted to go ahead and at least sell it, maybe make a little bit of money. So she decided to sell the book online, and she realized that she was able to sell the book pretty quickly. And it was after selling the book that she came up with an idea, and she started to think, but realized this, that she decided to think big. And so here you have this person who is working as a cashier at a grocery store. She sells one book, and after selling the one book, she starts to think. And the thought that's going on through her mind is, wow, I was able to sell that book and make a profit. What if I could sell another book? And then she began to expand her thinking. She said, well, what if I could sell several books each week? And then she said, well, wait a second. What if I could sell several books each month? What if I could make some additional income? And she said, well, wait a second. What if I could actually replace my income here as a cashier at a grocery store? She said, well, wait a second. I'm not going to stop my thinking there. She said, what if I could generate a six-figure business actually selling books? And so at that moment, that was just a thought. And then she decided to act on the thought. And then so she went out and just bought about 5 books. And then she was able to go ahead and resell those 5 books. She started going around to different garage sales that she saw going on in the different areas. And as she went to the garage sales, she would go and purchase the books. And then she would come back home, look up the value of the books, and continue to sell more books. Then she started finding out that some of the schools were actually had places where they actually had their school books, and they sold them in bulk. And so she started buying some of those school books and then reselling those school books. And so next thing you know, here's what I need you to realize. It started off with just a thought that she decided to expand and make a big thought. And next thing you know, I go over to my cousin's house, and literally, I'm not lying to you, it started off where she just had a couple books in the corner. And then I can tell you a couple months later, you go to her house and literally there's books all over the place. You couldn't even walk around. There's literally a trail that went from her front door to the kitchen, to the bedroom, and to the bathroom. Everywhere else was books. And let me just tell you that she didn't stop there. She started to expand her thinking. And so she partnered up with somebody, expanded her thinking, and started literally saying that, you know what, I've outgrown this apartment with these books. And her partner went and actually bought a warehouse, a 4,000 square foot warehouse. And they started continuing to sell the books. Then they picked up about 4 employees, and they had those employees actually helping them with selling the books and shipping the books and sending them out. And I can tell you this, after a couple years of growing the business, she had a multiple 6-figure business. This is somebody who was working as a cashier at a supermarket, who decided to begin to start thinking. And instead of just simply thinking small, instead of just saying, I'm going to continue to sell books so I can put a little extra gas in my car, instead of just saying, I'm going to continue to sell books so I have a little extra money to go to the movies on the weekend, she said, I'm going to think big. I'm going to start a six-figure business. I'm going to go ahead and grow it to a multiple six-figure business. I'm going to start hiring employees. I'm going to, of course, be able to not just hire employees. I'm going to get an over 4,000 square foot facility. And how did it happen? It all started because she decided to think, but she didn't stop there. She said, if I'm thinking, then I might as well think big. And so I want to remind you of what Donald Trump said. He said, if you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. And so here's what I want to challenge you right now. I want you to think about an area in your life in which you've been thinking about a goal or a dream. You've been thinking about doing something. I don't know what that thing is for you, but I want you to think about it. What is it? What is it that you've been thinking about doing? You haven't quite acted on it, or maybe you have acted on it, but you know in your heart that you can do more. You know in your heart that you can take it to the next level. And now I want to challenge you to expand your dream. I want to challenge you to make some things happen. You know, here's what I know. Listen, you can't fit a big dream into a small life. I want to repeat that. You can't fit a big dream into a small life. And so big lives, people who live big lives, the reason why they have big lives is because they think big and they take big steps in order to realize their goals and their dreams. And so what I'm saying to you is that there's another level to your life, that you have the ability to do more than what you've done thus far. And you have the ability to take your life to entirely different levels. But you can't get there if you don't first start raising the ceiling on your level of thinking. And so what I want you to do is to literally transform your level of thinking, take yourself to the next level. And so many of us, unfortunately, we literally have a cap on what we believe is possible for ourselves. And what I'm saying to you is, I want you to imagine for a moment, what if fear was not a problem? What if you could purge all the thoughts of rejection that were going on in your mind? What if all the past failures and disappointments we can get you to forget about? What if you didn't have to worry about how you were going to do it? What would you actually be thinking of? How big would your dreams be? What would you be thinking about was actually possible for you? And what is possible for you? Because here's what I know. Whatever you've accomplished until this point is only the tip of the iceberg of what's actually possible for you. And so here's what I know, that even if you've already wrote a book, listen, there's another book in you. There's a bestseller in you. Even if you've already started a business, realize this: whatever you're doing in your business, you have the ability to scale up and make more money, but not just make more money, but make more impact more lives, and even hire employees, but also be able to bless people with your gifts, with your skills, with your talents, with your products and your services. And maybe right now you've been in that place in your life where you're saying, well, Andy, I don't know, maybe for me it's too late. I don't know if I can make this thing happen. I want to remind you of something that George Eliot said. He said that it's never too late to become the person that you could have been. It's never too late to become the person that you might have been. And so the only thing that you've got to do is you've got to create a shift in your thinking. Somebody says that nothing changes until you begin to start changing your thought process, that you start changing the way that you actually think about things. Wayne Dyer, who has recently passed away, that has made such impact, he said, if you change the way that you look at things, the things you look at change. And so you've got to start changing your perspective, and much of your perspective is as a result of how you think. And so I want you to elevate your thinking. I want you to take yourself to the next level. You know, I have another one of my cousins, I won't forget this, you know, she loved to go ahead and apply makeup, you know, for friends and family. And I remember, you know, she always did her makeup very well, and there would always be friends and family around. And whenever people had to go out, they'd swing by and ask her, you know, hey, can you go ahead and put some makeup on for me? And so she realized that, you know, putting on makeup, that was something that she really enjoyed, that she enjoyed being a makeup artist. And so one day she made a decision. She says, you know what, Andy, she told me and she told the rest of the family, she says, I want to become a makeup artist. And we said, oh, that's awesome. You know, we said, well, you know, it's going to be a lot of work, you know, to be able to be a full-time makeup artist, be able to cover your bills and so forth. And then she thought about it some more, and she says she wants to elevate her level of thinking. And so she didn't just stop there. She says, wait a second, I don't want to just be a makeup artist. I want to be a makeup artist in Hollywood. I want to be a makeup artist in California. I want to be a makeup artist to the stars. I want to be a makeup artist to models, to high-end magazines, to high-end fashion shows. And we all looked at her like, okay, that sounds pretty good. But right now you're living in South Florida. That's going to be pretty hard to do. And then she said, well, wait a second here. I'm thinking big, and so I want to make this thing happen. And so literally she packed up her bags and she moved to California. And she just made the decision, I'm going to go to California now. Of course, there's some people asking her questions like, wait a second, what makes you think you could go to California? Number one, become a makeup artist. Number two, be able to get into the Hollywood industry. Who do you know out there? Who are your contacts? I mean, don't you know how difficult? That's like a shot 1 in a million. And she says, well, I know one person. I don't know a lot, but I know one person, and one person is enough. And she says, well, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, but I'm willing to move out there. I'm willing to figure it out. And so she moved to California. And let me just tell you something. The true story, I watched her for years. She struggled. For years, she struggled. I mean, she was doing makeup jobs, but she was working other little odd jobs, doing everything from babysitting, helping out, doing whatever, just to be able to generate enough income to be able to sustain herself. And also, not only that, but she was oftentimes applying makeup for people for absolutely for free, because it was her passion, because it was something that she wanted to do. And year after year, struggling, trying to make the thing happen, year after year. But what happened is, over time, she started getting better at applying the makeup. Over time, she began to make contacts because she was doing a lot of stuff for free, but doing things for free gave her access and was able to get her in the company of the right people. And let me just tell you, I can tell you this, over 10 years later, I can tell you right now that now she is a full-time makeup artist out in California, and she has applied makeup on some of the most amazing stars and up-and-coming stars, and stars that you and I have seen on the big screens out in Hollywood, and many of the very famous high-fashion models that you and I see in Vogue and all the different magazines, high-end magazines. All why? Why? Because she began to think. But she decided not to just think small. She decided to expand her thinking and have large, massive thinking. And so what I'm saying to you is, what's the difference between somebody who's out there living their goals and their dreams and making some things happen, and those of us who maybe perhaps are not, those of us who are maybe are not at where we truly want to be? And what I'm saying is, the only difference is that they're willing to literally expand their level of thinking, that they're literally willing to think big, but not just to think big, that's ultimately to be willing to follow it. And so what I'm saying to you is this: if whatever it is that you're thinking of right now, if it doesn't intimidate you, if you're not asking yourself, well, how am I going to do this? If you don't get nervous about your goals and your dreams, if you don't sit there at times and say, oh my goodness, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off. If you don't get intimidated, then chances are you're not thinking big enough. And what I'm saying to you is that there is still a big dreamer in you. There's still some big ideas in you. And so whatever it is that you've already think about, let me tell you, that's great that you have that idea. But what I'm saying is, you can make it bigger. You can impact more lives. Let me tell you, you owe it to yourself, but you don't just owe it to yourself. You owe it to other people. Why? Because if you have a gift, you have a skill, you have a talent, you have a vision, you have a dream, you have something that you wanted to do, understand this, that it needs to go beyond you. It's not just about you. It's about the people that you can impact. It's about the people's lives that you'll be able to change. You'll be able to change your life. You'll be able to change your family's life. But think about all the other people's lives that you can impact. As a matter of fact, the thing that makes dreamers big, the things that makes dreamers who are able to impact lives, is because they're thinking beyond themselves. We think about the Wright brothers who said, you know, we want to be able to put man on a device and have them to actually fly across the sky. They were thinking beyond themselves. If you think about Henry Ford, he was thinking beyond himself. You've got to be willing to think big. Albert Einstein was thinking beyond himself. And so I need you to be thinking big. Think of things that are able to impact and create impact beyond just you, but impact beyond just your household, but be able to impact lives. And not just that, be able to impact generations to come. Because I know that there's a big thinker in you. And so I want to remind you, Donald Trump said, if you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. And so I want you to think right now, what is it that you've been sitting on? What is it that you've been compressing and allowed to go small? and I want to awaken that I want to awaken that dreamer in you. And I want you to start thinking big again. I want you to start making some things happen and start thinking small, and realize that oftentimes when you want to think big, you may have to enlist the help of other people. You know, I can tell you right now, it's probably over 9 years ago. 9 years ago, a good friend of mine asked me to come into her elementary school and talk to some of her students, and I came in and I talked to the students, and this happened to be a school that was in an area that's one of the lowest socioeconomic areas in South Florida. And one of the things that I really noticed is that many of these kids, unfortunately, you know, they were coming from dire situations, and many of these kids during the holidays, specifically during Christmas, that they wouldn't have access to toys and gifts. And so I just made a very simple promise. I promised just her classroom that I was going to come back and bring them gifts. And so the following year, I decided to just enhance my level of thinking. And so I decided I was going to get gifts for her classroom and get gifts for the entire kindergarten class and the first grade class. And then the following year, I decided to expand my thinking. So I'm going to do kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And then so finally, I started having a conversation with a good friend of mine. His name is Angelo. And Angelo found out about what I was doing to get these toys for these kids. And Angelo looked at me and he said, Andy, listen, man, it's awesome that you're practically now doing about half the school. But Angelo said, man, why don't you just think bigger, man? Why don't you do the whole school? And I said, Angelo, listen, man, that's easier said than done, man. Let me tell you, I'm paying a pretty penny just buying these toys for these kids at the first, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You're talking about doing the entire school. He said, listen, man, I'm going to back you behind in this vision. And so next thing you know, we're doing that entire school. Well, let me just tell you, Angelo and a couple of the other guys who decided to help out, they said, let's expand the vision. Why should we just stop at this elementary school? Let's go ahead and do another elementary school. And so next thing you know, we're doing 2 elementary schools. And then somebody said, well, you know what? Let's not just stop it there. Let's go ahead and do a 3rd elementary school. So next thing you know, we're getting toys for every single kid in excess of about 3 elementary schools, and oftentimes literally over 1,500 toys for these children. And so it all started off, why? I was doing my thinking, and I thought I was doing level thinking, but somebody else pushed me to think even bigger. And see, what happens is sometimes when you're looking to think big, you've got to enlist the effort and support of other people to get you to elevate your thinking, to get you to take your thinking to the next level. And so understand this, that you are going to be limited if you try to make your goals, your dreams, and the things that you're thinking about surrounded around what you're capable of doing and what your resources are. Understand this, that if you will enlist the efforts of other people, you'll be able to expand your thinking and take it to another level and really truly be able to impact lives and take things literally to the next level. And so here's what I want to tell you right now. And if you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. The first thing that I want you to realize is this, that number one, if you're thinking that you're doing right now, whatever it is that you're thinking about accomplishing with your goals and your dreams, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, if it doesn't intimidate you, then one thing I can tell you for sure, that you're not thinking big enough. I'm going to repeat that. If whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, if it doesn't intimidate you, if you don't find yourself scratching your head saying, oh my goodness, how am I going to pull this off? Then chances are you are not thinking big enough. And so I want to challenge you to think even bigger. I want to challenge you to take your level of thinking to an entirely different level. This is one of the things I need you to understand. The second thing that I want you to write down, the second thing that I need you to understand, is that when you decide to think big, oftentimes you are going to have to enlist the help of other people. And so big visions require a big team. Big visions require support. And so don't be afraid to go ahead and share your dream, your vision, and your big idea with other movers and shakers, with other people who know how to make things happen. And so don't just limit your dream. Don't just limit your vision to what it is that you're capable of doing. I want you to push yourself. I want you to stretch and be willing to literally push yourself outside of your comfort zone so that you can do something that you wouldn't even believe. But also understand this, that truly big dreams require other people's efforts, other people's energy. And so just think about all the people who've made massive things happen and have accomplished huge things Every single one of them have had a team. They've had an individual. They've had some people who really helped them out to get and make some things happen. And so I want you to think about that. You know, perhaps probably one of the most influential people to ever walk the face of this earth, that even as powerful as he is, he still enlisted the help of 12 disciples. And so what I say is, if even he needed 12 disciples, what makes you think that you can make this thing happen on your own? So realize this, that you need to make sure that you get some disciples, get some people who buy into your vision, who buy into your dream, to help you to magnify your dream, to help you to touch more people, to help you to make more impact. And then realize this, the final thing that I need you to realize is, don't worry about how you're going to make it happen. You know, many of us, we get caught up in the how. You say, well, Andy, listen, I'm thinking big, but I don't know how. How am I going to have a bestseller? How am I going to have this massive company? How am I going to travel the world? How am I going to get out of debt? How am I going to have a fulfilling marriage? How am I going to listen? Don't worry about the how. I just need you to think big and then be willing to take the next best step. And once you take the next best step, from there, you will be revealed, something will be revealed to you to what the next best step is. And so what we've got to realize is this, that a journey of 1,000 steps, you've heard this before, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step. And so you got to be willing to take that one single step, because when you think big, unfortunately, you're not going to know exactly what it is that you got to do, but you can oftentimes identify at least what is the next best step. And once you take that step, trust and believe, the next step will appear. And so what I want to remind you one more time, Donald Trump said this. He said that if you're going to think, then you might as well think big. And so what I know is this, you've been thinking about some goals and some dreams. You've been thinking about making some things happen. You've been thinking about elevating your dreams. You've been thinking about a business, thinking about the book, thinking about taking your life to the next level. And so what I'm saying is, if you're going to be thinking, then you might as well think big. So let's make this thing happen, all right? So remember, number one, if you're going to be thinking, you might as well be thinking big. Expand your thinking, expand your vision. And if it doesn't intimidate you, then you're probably not thinking big enough. And truly big dreams require team effort. You're going to enlist the help of other people to help you to take your vision to the next level. And don't worry about how it's going to happen. Trust me, things are going to show up, things are going to work out, and eventually things are going to work out for you. And so here's what I know. I know that whatever this dream that you have, this vision that you have, as big as you might think it is, that you can take it to the next level. You can impact more lives. You can make a greater impact with everything that you're doing, but you have to be willing to think bigger. And so if you're going to be thinking, you might as well think big. You know, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Remember to show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, nobody else will. And so absolutely, I'm so excited that all of you have chosen to be part of the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement. I want to go ahead and just remind you a couple things. I want to stay connected with you. And so for some reason we're not connected, I want you right now to go to showupforyourlife.com, showupforyourlife.com. When you get there, you're going to see a banner where you can put in your name and your email address. Go ahead and put your name and email address. That's going to allow me to send you a free instant motivational message. And it's also going to allow me to continue to provide you with resources, videos, and content to allow you to show up for your personal life and also to be able to show up in your business. I want you to take things to the next level, because I know that there's some next levels that you need to get to in your life. And I know that you can get there. And also, I want to remind you too that we have a very private group that we've created specifically for people who are part of the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement. And I want to invite you to be part of that group. All you have to do is open up a separate web browser and type in showupgroup.com. Type in showupgroup.com. And when you type in showupgroup.com, it's going to direct you to a private Facebook group that we have. And in that private Facebook group, you can go ahead and send us a request to join the group. And we'll be more than happy to go ahead and allow you to join the group. And that'd be the place where we can interact. You can go ahead and send me a personal message, and you can post your comments and your feedback from the value that you're receiving from listening to these conference calls and listening to these live stream messages. We love to hear from you. We love to place a face for those of you who sort of listen in. And of course, like we always do, you know, I am about to open up the conference call lines. But before we do that, let me also say this. I am so super excited. As many of you know, we just recently launched our 6-month coaching program, the Make Your Move 6-month coaching program, which is designed specifically for people who are either want to get into business or people who are already in their business and who want to take themselves to the next level. And so if you want to make the rest of this year the best of this year, and you know in your heart that you really want to be able to get some help and some coaching, I invite you to join myself and my wife, Coach Kaz, for this 6-month coaching program that we just recently launched. And if you would like to just simply apply, and you're going to get a phone call directly from myself or my wife, Coach Kaz, to give you the details about the Make Your Move coaching program, I want you right now to go to yourpowercouple.com. Simply go to yourpowercouple.com. Once again, that's yourpowercouple.com. And when you get there, you'll be able to fill out a very quick, simple application. You'll receive a phone call from us within 24 hours of filling out the application, and we'll give